So there is this literary work where I'm from that tells the story of this village drunk named Calvin that drinks and acts out all day long. And you can imagine that the people in that village is pretty tired of him and dismisses him as just that drunk. But one of the most powerful pieces of dialogue that I still remember to this day, even though I read that story almost a decade ago, is one that he delivers. And it goes like this. Calvin says, quote, "Everyone knows that Calvin drinks, but nobody asks why Calvin drinks." End quote. When talking about the sneaker community, it's impossible not to stumble across the Hypebeast. Even if you aren't really part of the sneaker community and you've never heard about the word Hypebeast before, I bet you've seen them. These people who are decked out from head to toe in loud clothing brands like Supreme, Bape, Palettes, etc., sporting outfits that would make any college student's bank account cry while harvesting likes and followers on social media. Now, the Hypebeast is a pretty weird animal in the sneaker community because it seems that everyone hates Hypebeasts except for other Hypebeasts. And even then it can vary. The most common criticisms being thrown that way that I've seen online is that they're stupid, that they are the reasons that prices are going up, that they are spoiled brats, and that they are insecure, sad people. And even if all these statements were true, there is one question I rarely see being thrown around when talking about this, and that is why. Why do these people do what they do? And it's this question that I want to dig deeper into today. There will be different sections in this video that you can jump to if you already know about that specific topic. I would, however, still encourage you to watch the video in its entirety and form your own opinion about these people at the end of the video. So do you ever feel differently depending on what clothes you wear? Do you ever feel like that one shirt or that one pair of pants that when put on makes you feel a little bit better? Well, you're not the only one who feels that way. In the beginning, clothes' primary function was to keep you warm and protect you from the outside world. Now you have clothes that works as a status symbol. We only need to look at our current fashion landscape to confirm that fact. And aside from showing off what kind of style you have, clothes also has an effect on your mind, hence why I ask if you've ever feel differently by wearing something specific. This phenomenon is actually called enclothed cognition. So what does this word that sounds like something I just made up mean? Well, when put in layman terms, enclothed cognition is a term used to describe how specific clothes have an effect on people's psyche, affecting how they feel, think, and function, all because of what clothes they're wearing right now. I know this sounds kind of crazy, that some kind of fabric can have this kind of power over you, but let me ask you again, how does your favorite shirt make you feel? And how does enclothed cognition looks like? Well, there were these studies that was conducted in 2012 that is a part of a bigger research project that explored this phenomena. Now, there has since been done a lot more research into this that I encourage you to look up for yourself. I mean, it is pretty weird stuff. But I want to highlight two main studies that were part of that project that I found interesting. In these studies, the researchers had participants doing different tasks while wearing different clothes. In the first study, the researchers had a group of people with half of the participants wearing normal clothes while the other half were wearing what you would refer to as a doctor's coat, and then perform a test called the strobe test, that is basically you calling out a specific name of a color while the letters may be written in a different color. Despite this small difference, the results were very clear. The people in the doctor's coat scored significantly higher than the ones who didn't wear it, which in turn meant that specific clothes have an impact on the human psyche to the point where it actually affects performance. Another study that the same researchers did that I found even weirder had the participants being split up in 3 groups, one wearing what you would call a painter's coat, one with a doctor's coat, and one with no coat. Like we saw with the last study, the results were very clear, with people who wore the doctor's coat scoring significantly higher than the others. The interesting part about this study, however, was that the participants who wore the coats were wearing the same coat, but they had just been given different names. So here we see that not only do specific clothes have an effect on us, but clothes that we ourselves derive some meaning from can in turn have an effect on our performance. Now, I'm no psychologist, so take what I say with a grain of salt, but if these studies show anything, is that in theory you would actually be able to perform better at something by just giving some clothes you own a specific meaning. It's really interesting when you think about it, and when you take this and apply it to hype clothing, you begin to understand why some people may be drawn to it. Hype clothing is expensive, limited, loud, and kind of unique, and if you think about how it would make a person feel, it wouldn't surprise me if they said special, valued, unique, different. And when you take these things into consideration, you begin to understand the Hypebeast a little bit more. But wouldn't you be able to experience these feelings without paying so much? I mean, as I talked about in my video about replicas, there are good quality imitations out there that would basically give you the same thing but for far less money. So why don't they do it? Well, if you ask that question, you might as well ask why people buy luxury items in the first place. To people who haven't grown up with a whole lot like myself, understanding the reasonings behind why people buy luxury items is a very foreign concept to me, and I like to think that you feel the same way if you clicked on my video. But the truth is that when talking about luxury items, you first need to understand what it does to a person. A study conducted at Yale looked at this and found some very interesting reasons to why people insist on buying luxury. One of the tendencies that they covered was the human perception of price equals quality. I think that we can all recognize this, and I also bet that we met a lot of people who follow this tendency, like, people who buy Apple products. But this does not only apply to electronics, but to stuff like clothes, watches, cars, etc. And I think that the reasoning why many have this perception of price equals quality is because they think you get what you pay for. And while I do agree with that on some things, there are also a lot of places where this just does not apply. Another reason that the study talks about is the effect it has on self-esteem, and just like I talked about how clothes do have an effect on us, the purchase of a $500 hoodie rather than one that retails for $80 does have an effect on some people. It makes them feel, again, special, valued, worth something, things that again come back to the effect on self-esteem. But you could argue that why don't they just buy the fake version? I mean, wouldn't it give the same result but for far less money? If it's the brand that has the effect? Well, according to the study, no, because in this case, authenticity matters. The Yale researchers conducted an experiment with children. They convinced the child that a cloning machine had cloned their favorite toy. Now, you would think that a child wouldn't care about this, but that was not the case. Most children refused the duplicate, which from that they concluded that it is not only the item itself that has an effect on a person, but also the sentimental value that comes with purchasing that item or having that item. And I think that we can all recognize that something is just more special when you work for it, saved up for it, and then bought it instead of just getting it. And this is present even in the youngest of children. And while all these things show the effect that luxury items have on us, I think the study's most interesting take on why we buy luxury is the rational contra psychological choice that is made. Some purchases are just not rational because it is not a rational choice that is being made, but a psychological one. That is also why we see people we know buying expensive things even though we know they can't afford them or shouldn't be able to. It is this key difference between rational and psychological that might explain why Hypebeasts do the things they do. And when you factor in the other reasonings to why people buy luxury goods, you begin to get a better understanding of them, especially Hypebeast YouTubers, and you also begin to see some patterns repeat themselves. Now, I'm not saying that the only right way of buying items is through the rational choice, because I think that even that can be turned into something extreme, because just like we know someone who buys stuff that they shouldn't, we also know someone who should buy stuff but doesn't. So going through all these studies and research done on clothing and what it does to people, am I defending or trying to make excuses for Hypebeast? Well, not really. As I said, this video is more a look into the mind of these people, and at the end of the day, there's only so much that I can theorize and write out from studies done on the subject. And I also think that people should wear what they want. But Hypebeasts are people too, even though it is kind of hard to admit sometimes. And I wanted to hear what they have to say on the subject. All about it, both good and bad. Now, while I do sport a decent collection of sneakers, and while granted some of them are more hyped than others, I am no hypebeast. And to add to that, my knowledge about fashion is also rather limited. When it comes to clothes I usually go out in the basics, and maybe a nice shirt if I'm going out or going somewhere where that kind of attire is expected. Therefore, I'm no person of authority when talking about why people get swept into this kind of fashion. So instead I talk to the actual hypebeasts, both former and current, about why they do what they do. And I got a lot of answers and a lot of reasons, but there were three main themes that just kept coming up when talking about this, which I also think are the most predominant aspects when talking about this kind of streetwear culture. And it also enforces a feeling that I have every time I watch a video from one of these Hypebeast YouTubers, that maybe everything isn't always what it looks like. If we for a second forget the hard flexers, Instagram influencers, and the cloud chasers, hype clothing and streetwear in and of itself is something that some people do see as a genuine hobby and has a genuine interest in. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that you actually have some people who have a true passion about this stuff, and to be honest, I get that. When looking at some of these different shirts, hoodies, pants, etc., I have to admit that some of it does look good. Now, that may just be my bad taste in fashion, but I get why some people think that this looks cool. It's different, it stands out, and when combined with other clothes of its kind, it can create a unique style for the person wearing it. And I think that's what fashion is about in the end. Not trends, but style. And after talking with Hypebeast about this part of the fashion scene, I got a feeling that they shared the same sentiment. Talking about their favorite designers and how they think, listing different articles of clothing from memory, even giving me a list of things they wish they could have bought had they only been born earlier. It was this kind of interest that I could recognize from myself and my interest in sneakers. To these people, it is truly about the fashion, the trends, and how these things change over time. And you know, these people would also agree with me when I asked them if they didn't think that the prices for some of these things were outrageous. But at the same time, they were also defend it by saying that it's just the way it is. And while I could create a discussion out of that, one answer in particular really stood out to me. Quote, I used to always watch rappers in music videos and celebrities wear these cool clothes, and I couldn't afford that because I grew up poor, you know. But I still kept an interest in it. And now that I can afford it, I'm buying it. And it is expensive, yes, but I mean, aren't most hobbies? And if you have a love for it, I don't think the price really matters. End quote. Now, while I do disagree with parts of that statement, I can at least respect it because to this guy, it wasn't about changing people's opinion about him, but about a genuine interest that some people just doesn't understand. A feeling that I and possibly also you guys can relate to when we try to defend why we spend so much money on sneakers while we already own more than 2 pairs. But while this kind of story is nice, I would call people like this guy an outlier in this field because the next themes that came up were not only more prominent in the people that I talked to, but they were also rather sad as well. I think we've all felt that sense of not belonging somewhere, whether you were a third wheel to a date or went to a party where you didn't know anybody, or as some people experienced during their school years, not having a group of people to be with. Kids can be really mean, and it's not something that is entirely their fault because kids are stupid. And I think that if they truly understood the future consequences of their actions, they would act differently. However, that is not the world we live in. When talking to some hypebeasts, especially former ones, one thing that really made an impact on me was the feeling of needing to belong that most of these people had. Many of them told me how they moved to new schools, countries, or areas where they didn't know anybody and they didn't have any friends. And this reality was hard for them because some of them just wanted that one person to talk to or just a group of friends to hang out with. And that's where the hypebeast aspect comes in. I was told that in most schools, especially high school, you can find a group of people who love to wear hyped stuff and in a sense only hang out with people who share that sentiment. Because as we stated before, kids are stupid. But again, this can also work as a segue into getting new friends, and if your parents have the money and feel like compensating for all the time they can't spend with you due to them working, it seems like a pretty easy way to get to know people. And while most of us look at this and think that it is stupid because what you're doing here is just creating an artificial relationship with these people because while it may be an easy way to get to know them better and maybe form a real relationship along the way, you also risk the chance of it staying that way. Artificial, because they don't like you as a person, but rather because you seem like one of them. And if I had to take an unprofessional guess on what situation occurs more often, I would say the latter rather than the former. But in truth, I can't really fault these people for thinking like this. I mean, high school is hard, very fucking hard, and that's without starting from scratch social-wise. And when your alternative may be loneliness, I can't fault people for trying to buy their way into fitting in. This is a really sad reality, and I think that one of the worst things about this is that they kind of make it hard to feel sorry for them when they go around and show off how much money their outfit is worth or telling you how you are worthless because you don't have the quote-unquote right clothes. And all of this attitude may just be rationalization for the privilege to fit in with a group so you don't get to experience how it feels to sit alone at a table at lunchtime. But then again, I think those people eat their lunch in the bathroom anyway. That may be the reason why you don't see them. Have you ever looked at a building and just thought, wow, This whole majestic structure is all built on one single foundation, just one single thing. And if I had to take a guess based on my research into this topic, I would say that to Hypebeast, insecurity is that foundation. I don't think it's something new. I mean, if you yourself have been an insecure person and overcome it, I believe you can spot the signs from a mile away. The fragile ego, the bravado, the need to assure each and every person you meet that you are cool. It's a rather toxic mindset when you get down to it, and I believe that it's something that can only be fixed from within. However, this does not stop people from trying to buy their way out of it, and I can't really blame them. I mean, we live in a rather weird world with the ability to either look into another person's life or have our own lives be seen by other people. And I think that this kind of monitoring and gathering of internet points to win a game that doesn't really exist creates people with serious problems, especially if you have the means to fuel that problem. I'm not trying to be a douche or anything, but when I look at Hypebeast videos, see my collection videos, my X amount of dollars hype room videos from different people on YouTube, you kind of see a certain type of person being the one with the expensive things. A type of person that you just know is compensating for something. It's kind of hard to describe without being mean, but I think we all know what I'm talking about. And whenever I look at these people, I just feel sorry for them because I know how they feel when the camera is off and they're sitting alone in their room. The difference is that I didn't have stuff to keep me from growing as a person. And while I used to curse out my parents for not being able to provide me with all the things that I wanted, as I grew older, I'm actually becoming very thankful for the way I grew up. I think it's easy to laugh at these people who on one side is obviously trying to make people think they're cool and also spending disgusting amounts of money on stuff they don't really need. And I know that in most cases it's not their money, but it is still disgusting. And the worst part is that some adults still carry this terrible habit into adulthood. I mean, I think we can all at least name one person who still does this. And I get it, if you feel like this, you may see it as a necessity. This constant hunt for validation and confirmation of self-worth has only become worse, and I'm just thankful that I got out of high school before it really became bad. But as I said before, this kind of solution, while easy, is only temporary. You can do a lot to make a building look nice and attractive, but if the thing is built on a toxic, infested foundation, you need to tear that thing down and build something more stable and less toxic. It's not easy, but nothing that is important and worth something is easy. So in conclusion, what's the point of this video? Is it to paint a picture of the Hypebeast as a flawed person that deserves your sympathy? No, I don't think I could make that video even if I wanted to. I wanted to make a video not about the Hypebeast as a whole, but more about the person. As I said in the beginning, I see a lot of people pointing and laughing at people in this community, and to some degree it is not only understandable, but also pretty much deserved. But if we take the label off for a second and instead asks why, I think we would get a better understanding of the person behind the clothes. I know I did. And if you feel attacked or disagree with me or any of my statements, then feel free to write me a mean comment. But if you also just want to talk to me, then you can write me as well. As a final statement, I would like to say that I don't know where this trend of being a hypebeast is going, as it has in recent years become more of a label that you would rather avoid. And I don't know where this whole hype trend is going either, since it's pretty unpredictable, with new designers rising up all the time and for some reason old ones being outed as sexual predators. I don't know what's up with that. But I know that there's always a person behind the profile or the YouTube video with their own battles and complications, and I think that we should, if not remember that, at least keep it in our minds when we watch another video about a kid who may not be the best looking showing off his new pieces that he bought for his parents' money. Just, you know, maybe just feel a little bit sorry for him, and that goes for every hypebeast really. Except for Barry and Connor. I mean, they can honestly just go fuck themselves. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you did so, and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm SneakerClev, and I'll see you in the next video.